Well, I have something I think you'll find of interest. It's my thoughts on what our wonderful President Trump's strategy is for dealing with this coronavirus. Now, of course, here's the caveat. This is my opinion, my assessment of watching him, because I've been trying to figure out how does he deal with this and why he's in a bind. But he's a very clever person. Let me tell you what I think I've observed. And I'll be interested in hearing your thoughts as well in your comments. Because as you know, I try to respond to all the comments I receive. And I think the last 2 weeks I've been able to do that. And I certainly read them all. For sure, I read them all. Some I read several times. But let's get back to why our president is in a bind. But he knows how to get out of it. First of all, we're dealing with global fears here. It's not independent fear, like this country is fearful, this country is fearful. When countries decide to do something, they're looking to what other countries do. I was struck by a quote from Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. He's the Stanford guy that had the article along with someone else in the Wall Street Journal. And he was being quoted in an interview, and I'll put a link on a pinned comment to this because it was with the Hoover Institute guy, that he had this interview. But anyway, he was talking about we should be honest about what we know and don't know. And he basically said there's a lot of scientific disagreement. No one knows. If they claim they know how many deaths are going to happen or whatever, no one knows. And he said the problem is when you plug worst case scenarios into their models, someone does this, the press picks up on it. And then politicians have to respond. Even when the scientific basis for that projection is really unknown. And he's basically, we've all heard about the denominator stuff. It has to do with that. So I've been thinking a lot about our president. And remember, what I really admire, well, I admire a lot of things about President Trump, how he fights for our country, da-da-da-da. But what I really like is, I like to observe how he learns. And, initially, he had what you would expect from a president. We'll get through this, kind of an optimistic tone. Well, he got burned on that. Oh, he's not taking it seriously enough. No, of course he did take it seriously, stopping all flights from China and the like. But that was how he was attacked. So, and then he also, there's been a lot of talk that it would be a good idea to say when this would likely end. That would help businesses, that would help a lot. So he picked Easter. Well, he got burned on that too. So you notice he's not giving a date right now. But I will tell you why I think the date is definitely before the end or by the end of April. Not any longer than that. So I was listening today being Saturday, April 4th, the press briefing. I listened to it a couple times, actually. And here's what our president is saying. First of all, he emphasized over and over again how his first priority is protecting human life. Everyone has to say that. I hear that on every show, everywhere. If they don't say that, you're going to be attacked relentlessly. Of course people want to protect human life, but you don't do it at all costs. We never do. But here's another thing he's saying, using the scientists' own models. He kept saying that the worst is coming this week or next. And interestingly enough, even Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York has said that. The worst is coming this week or next. We have to be prepared for that. But throughout the press briefing today, he kept emphasizing many, many times, it was a common thread throughout, we have to get our people and our economy back to work. Even Dr. Anthony Fauci spoke. Now, let me just say something about him. I've been irked at him. The reason is because like all scientific experts, he's very narrow. And so to get into discussions about how long the lockdown, or whatever we want to call it, is going on, to me, he should not talk about that. Because that's a broad-based question. And he has no expertise in that. He should stick to what he knows. Because as an expert, he only sees a narrow slice. And when you're just looking at one thing, that's what you concentrate on. And I think it's dangerous to rely on experts to try to tell us how to live our lives in a broader way. Because they're missing the bigger picture. And then another thing that was starting to bother me about him was that he's becoming a star. You know, even he's 79 years old. He looks good. He seems like an interesting man, but there's a danger in that. Because, well, what makes him a star right now? It's because people are afraid and because we have this lockdown going on. If that goes away, who is he? Now, I'm not saying he does any of this consciously, but one of the things I have learned in my life is that people are motivated by unconscious factors. He is a star on the right and on the left. Maybe not so much on the right, but definitely on the left. I mean, they have him on shows. They talk about how wonderful he is and that Trump should listen to him, blah, blah, blah. So, in a way, Trump kind of has to seem to listen to him because he's become a star. And that's also dangerous because I'm hoping that he is emotionally mature enough that he can let that go. But here's the other thing. So he actually spoke at today's press conference. So listen very carefully to what he said. Well, we have to, and I'm quoting because I wrote these words down, we have to at least think about returning to some degree of normality. What is going to be happening as we end this week and go into next week? Again, echoing what President Trump was saying. You will be seeing deaths go up, but the effects of mitigation efforts will also be kicking in because we'll have a lower number of cases, and this will allow us to begin changing a bit. So everybody's talking about this week and next. So I don't know how President Trump got him to say that, but I'm really glad Fauci's beginning to talk this way. Although it irks me that it even matters if he says that. We didn't elect him to be our president. Thank you very much. So, what do I think our president's going to do? He's going to reopen by the end of the month. He's setting us up for that, but he's doing it with the science. He's doing it with everything. Like, I think he knows, because it kind of comes out, we don't need all these ventilators. So in the end, we're going to be sending him to other countries. But because people are all panicked, we need ventilators, which are, to me, death machines. If you go on a ventilator, you're as good as gone for most cases. But he has to show that he's going with the governors and whatever. I've been thinking a lot this week about fear. I mean, what do humans fear? And what has evolution caused us to fear the most? Maybe you can think of others, but definitely anything to do with the weather. Bad weather was not a good thing. I mean, people would starve. Diseases that spread, pestilence, whatever. People were very fearful of that. And also, people historically have been afraid of the unknown. Hello? How are we any different than people in the Middle Ages? Isn't that the same today? And doesn't the left or people who want to, I mean, I don't know that they consciously want to. I mean, I was part of this in the past, but they think that the only way to manage these kinds of things is from some kind of top-down control, like with the UN, world government, whatever. And we're seeing that now. So we look to experts to give us the answer. And to me, that is a bad, bad way to live. If you look to experts to give you the answers as to how you should live your life, or what you should fear, you're in for a lot of grief. Because you are someone who can look at the larger picture. You need to look at the larger picture and take what the expert says, what the experts say, and fit it into your life as a whole. There's certainly, and a very easy way to look at this is on medical advice, okay? You need to say, is this worth it in the context of something larger? I had to do with medical testing, because I picked up on the only time I saw my husband depressed, when he had no reason to be depressed, was when he did medical testing. His brother talked him into getting a colonoscopy and this and that. And I thought, why is Harold so depressed? And I realized there was nothing wrong with him. It was that he was taking all these tests. So he just said, let's quit doing tests. Stop it. It's hurting the quality of his life. Gilbert Welch talks a lot about that you can just, it's called the worried sick. It's like, decide what you want to do, but don't let these tests, these whatever, make you worried. I don't do any tests. I don't do any cancer screening. I don't do, I only go to the doctor if I need help in a particular area, period. I'm not looking for trouble. I mean, I do blood tests and things like that because I want to monitor what I'm doing with all my supplements and various things like that. But if I go see a doctor, they're working with me. They're not telling me what to do. So don't give your autonomy away. I mean, you can if you want, but I wouldn't do that. I've been noticing that Democrats, in addition to not respecting our Constitution, they keep wanting Trump to do all this stuff, and he's respecting states' rights. He's working with the governors. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And he's not. He's not taking power away. And as a result, even the Democratic governors like him. But I'm noticing on a local level, Democrats are petty, petty tyrants. I mean, they just arrested some guy who was surfing in Malibu. Why? I mean, really? I mean, you can see it online. It's just disgusting. And again, they're the ones that don't respect states' rights. They seem to want to have federal government control over everything. So I've I've always known this about the Democrats, but it's pretty bad. One of the reasons I was attracted when I was young to math, science, and engineering was that I really value clear thinking. And one of the things I thought as an adult is that we humans were different from those people of the Middle Ages. But I now actually think that we're not. We aren't really that different. Honestly, I've been so dismayed by how, for example, climate science has been, it's so bad. I don't even know where to start with it. To treat our highly complex, nonlinear system of the climate like we evil humans with our CO2 emissions, we have a little knob there and we can control it. And now you have all kinds of, well, half the people believing it. It's during the Democratic early debates, when they had something on climate change, listening to Governor Jay Inslee of Washington and Kirsten Gillibrand. I mean, you have people, I listened to them and I was like, used to be like listening to Jerry Brown as well, our governor. It's like you are listening to somebody who's a raving lunatic. A raving lunatic. It's a shock that these people are in charge of anything, any part of our government. Well, and I don't need to get into the details of the climate issue here, but I have plenty of videos on that. Climate alarmism made me walk away, and why the Green New Deal is not a good idea. So you can stream down through my channel and find those, and I really laid out the case as to why I feel that way. But now with this virus, it's really it's really kind of shocking to me that we have shut down our economy, and the worldwide we are shutting down economies for this. For what? I mean, like I've said before, I've read a lot about the 1918 flu pandemic, and it was awful. I mean, you had young soldiers just dying. They'd come in and then like 6 or 8 would die in the same room, and their bodies were, I mean, just awful, ugly things, okay? But let's compare that to today. As of Friday, the world, passed 1 million cases. Do you know what the population of the world is? 7.8 billion people. So we have 1 million cases worldwide. And more than 53,000 fatalities. This Reuters article said this does not capture the full spread. The virus mostly goes undetected in people with minor symptoms or none at all. So I'm sorry, people. Just pretend you don't have this fear of this virus and it hasn't been spreading. And you just heard this. And somebody said to you, oh, we're going to shut down the entire economy globally, basically, because of that. Most people have minor symptoms or none at all. Well, they give us these reasons like, okay, we're doing this so we don't have this overflow in the hospitals for older people. Well, older people usually die of comorbidities. They have a lot of different problems. I mean, I'm not sure of the reason, but I think like in Louisiana, I mean, if you have diabetes, you tend to get this. So it's kind of like you have all these health issues, or you're just getting older. So this hits you, and this may be the thing that puts you over the edge. That's it. Again, do you know anybody who's died? Do I know anybody who's died? Nobody has died. Now, maybe you know of some older person that's died, but I don't know, like, what did my parents die of? They went to the hospital because they had pneumonia. And they died overnight. But my dad, he didn't want to go to the hospital. But my mother said, so my oldest sister and a nurse and her husband, they took him to the hospital. And then after they left him there, overnight, I guess they called my mother late at night and said, we'd like to give him some oxygen. And so she didn't really understand what that meant. She said, okay. Well, my dad grew up as a farm boy in Nashville, Tennessee. He was very capable, and he didn't want any of that. So they put that ventilator tube down his throat. And he pulled it out. And then they tied his arms down. And when they did that, he went into heart failure. And I think I know what my dad did. He said, screw it, I'm out of here. That was hard for me to think about. But I thought, he married a woman who was weak in those areas. My mother was weak in those areas. She was strong in some things, but weak in others. And I often tell myself that. That's who he chose, and he loved her very much. But in the end, she couldn't help him. I would not let them ever do anything like that to Harold. I would never let him. That's why I didn't want to take him to a hospital. Oh my God, right now. I mean, what if he was in some kind of nursing home and they would not let me visit him? Are you kidding me? So I don't have a good view of nursing homes. I don't have a good view of ventilators. They're torture devices. So what did my dad die of? Was it pneumonia? Heart failure? I don't know. I don't remember. Well, I actually have a copy of his death certificate. I could look it up, but they probably put heart failure. But my point is that what if he also had gotten, I don't know, coronavirus? Would that be a coronavirus death? That's not what killed him. He was 90 years old. It wasn't a surprise that he would go. It was a surprise when my mother went. She was pretty vibrant, and she was 5 years younger. And I was sleeping next to her in the bed because we all went to Portland, Oregon, all our family, to help her. And I was particularly close to her. And she started getting the same pneumonia that he had. And then there was one point where she couldn't get up. So my sister and I conferred, and we called the ambulance. And my sister rode with her in the ambulance because she's a nurse. And so Diane and I, my oldest sister, we were working together on this and conferring with each other. And we got to the hospital, so she and I were in the room together. And then I stayed with my mother that night. Everybody left. But when I stayed with her, oh my God, it's off. I mean, and they were very nice at this Oregon hospital. I was pretty impressed because they brought in a cot for me to sleep next to her. But she just kept saying, I'm just so tired. It turns out her blood sugar just shot way up. Nobody had suspected she had high blood sugar because, and I've mentioned this before, because she was slender. She just didn't fit the profile. But Turns out on my mother's side of the family, we don't put out a lot of insulin as we get older. But she had really high blood sugar. Like, it was like 800 or something milligrams per deciliter, which is dangerous. And she just had all kinds of things, but I'm convinced she unconsciously wanted to die. My dad died on Wednesday, and this was now Tuesday. Well, no, she died on Tuesday, so maybe it was Monday when we took her to the hospital. But anyway, so I'm lying next to her. And even though the nurses were nice, there's just like, there was a light on above, and she was, oh, this light. And so I turned it off. I should have noticed that, but I hadn't. And because she had an IV, all kinds of stuff. And they were saying to her, every time she turned beep, 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 it's like, she needs to sleep, people. So when the nurse came in, I said, can we, turn some, no, we can't do that. So I went and turned everything off. And there was one, I couldn't find a way to turn it out, so I found the cord and I unplugged it. Because I'm not going to bother her with these stupid beeps that mean nothing. It's like, after a while, the nurses don't even pay attention because they know it's nothing. But this is what I mean about health experts being too narrow. They're not looking at the fact that when a person is ill, they need sleep, uninterrupted sleep. You don't want to be constantly waking them up. So I'm lying next to her, holding her in the bed, because she kept saying she really only had like 1 hour of misery, if you want to call it that, where she's going, oh, my legs hurt, Mama. So I'm rubbing her legs and this and that, and she, I just want to go to sleep. I go, you're going to go to sleep. It's fine, it's fine. I just kept reassuring her, and she finally fell asleep. So I'm holding her, glad that she was able to sleep. And all of a sudden, somebody opens the door of the hospital room, and this woman comes in with this cart. She's obviously going to take vitals or something. I jump out of the bed. I go, hey, you're not coming in here. I said, she's sleeping. Come back in the morning, but not now. And I'm thinking, what would they have been doing to her if I hadn't been there? It's just, hospitals are awful. Avoid them if you can at all costs. But anyway, I've talked about this before, but it was lying next to her that I had a really kind of a special moment. It's almost like our bodies were communicating. And I had not thought about her dying at that time, but I suddenly realized she was telling me she wanted to die. And the more I look back at that, the more grateful I am that she was able to go. It would have been too hard for her to live without my dad, and she'd had a good life. They both had lived independently in their home. They loved each other. They were proud of all their 8 kids. It was a great life. And this idea that you just try to keep people alive no matter what, I don't get that. I just don't get that. So finally, let me talk a little bit about masks. Well, we've learned, and I've heard some interviews, where masks can prevent like half the virus spread. I was watching an American Experience show about the night, that's a pretty good program on PBS. But it was about the 1918 pandemic, and I'm suddenly noticing that everybody's wearing masks. So people have known for a long time that masks work. So I was extremely unimpressed when the Surgeon General said, there's no data to support the use of masks. I thought, what do you think we are, idiots? That was just so awful when he said that. So he doesn't have any credibility with me. But now the CDC is recommending the use of masks. I don't like the idea of wearing a mask, but what they're talking about is non-symptomatic people could spread the virus. And I'm let me just say I'm really glad President Trump is not wearing a mask. I just think that would send the wrong message. And I would like to not wear a mask, and I certainly won't wear a mask when I'm out and about, but I know this community that I live in, and it will become a requirement probably to even go into the grocery store. So this morning, was it this morning, last night, whatever, this morning I think, I went on Amazon, I managed to get a mask, you know, it's kind of like a scarf, because they say a scarf. So Devin, I know you're listening. I know you hate this stuff too. I got two. So I have one for you, because I think we're gonna need it just until this is over, to go into like a grocery store or something like that. Because if you don't wear it, I mean, I'm not afraid of getting something. So it's not a matter of me wearing it, but they think, you're gonna give it to me. And this community, they shut down the bike path. You know, we have this beautiful bike path. So one of my Democratic friends told me that, and it's really disappointing. He likes to rollerblade. But it's like, why would you shut down the bike path? There's plenty of social distancing on the bike path. And do you know how dangerous it is to ride a bike on the city streets? Especially on Pacific Coast Highway. I did that once with Harold, and it was like, that was because it was one place where the bike path wasn't built. So we had to go on PCH, and it was harrowing because you're in this very narrow thing with cars speeding by. And I didn't like that at all. But they now built this beautiful bike path. But are you kidding me? So, and then they arrest that surfer dude. It's like, this is California crazy. By the way, Dave Morrison of Blue Collar Logic, he has a really good talk about why, you know, it's not because of our mitigation efforts here in Los Angeles and Southern California. It's that we're far more spread out. We just don't have very many cases here. But we have everybody, even though we have very few cases here, we've got everybody believing these models and projections, and they're scared. So I will wear a mask to the grocery store. Don't ever vote for a Democrat, ever again. And I predict this will be over before the end of April. Thanks for listening.